What if true belonging has nothing to do with fitting in and everything to do with showing up as yourself? On this episode of No Gray Areas, we sit down with Gina Casazza, speaker, Navy SEAL prep grad, and author of the children's book, You Really Truly Do Belong. She shares how curiosity can fuel resilience, how stories can connect us, and why belonging starts from within. Let's get into it. Gina Casazza, thank you so much for joining us in the No Gray Areas podcast. I'm so excited about our interview today. For one thing, you're a children's author and a participant in the Navy SEALs training program, which I'm sure our audience is like going, wait, what? How do those go together? Which we're going to I want to circle back to that a little bit later. But let me start by asking you this. If someone were to go to your website, the tagline right at the top says, inspiring minds, building belonging, and sparking imagination. I love that. I think all three of those are valuable. I think you're specifically talking about children with those probably. You can speak into that. But those are so important for adults too. Can you share why that's your tagline?
So you're right. It's very important. I do speakings to adults as well. I mean, primarily children, but I do speak with adults. And one of the big topics that I talk about when I'm speaking to adults, not with children, I talk about how curiosity fuels resilience. And how we stopped being curious at a certain point in our lives. And I don't really talk about this with kids because I'll need to, because they're super curious, right?
Yeah.
And when you could just lean into that curiosity, we talked about it when I mentioned Harry Potter and my love for Harry Potter and in the world that she created, right? She leaned into being curious and creating this world. And I wonder what it's like to be an author. And all these things. I have so many people that come to me and they're like, I have a book idea, or I wish I could do that. Or, I have a book, but I have no idea where to start. It's like, well, you're not getting curious enough. Like, you're just ending it right there. I don't know where to start. And there's the ending. And it's like, but if you could get a little bit curious, how can I do that? And ask yourself all these questions. I guarantee you within the year, you will be doing that, and we stop asking questions because, we get tired, we're lazy, we have too much going on, we don't want to, add another thing to our plate, or we just don't want to fail, right? We don't want to screw things up, as an adult, when you mess things up, it's expensive sometimes, and that's another fear, and with kids, they don't have any of that. They don't have any of those worries. The only thing really is everyone going to be laughing at me? And that's a big one for kids, and that carries on into adulthood as well. And that's one of the reasons why I just feel like being curious, it increases your imagination. It does everything for you. And that's one of the things that I feel like we need to never lose.
Man, I so agree with that. And it's fascinating when you watch kids. Like, my kids are grown now, and now I have 7 grandkids, and I'm watching them as little kids. Why? Right? Especially 2 to 5. It's why? They call me Poppy. It's like, why, Poppy? Why does this work, Poppy? Why does it do that? That's that curiosity that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. We start to lose that. Do you think we start to lose that? You mentioned kids, really their only fear is being laughed at. Is that where it starts, where we start to lose it there?
I think as we get older, the education system that we've created really stifles creativity.
Agree.
Yeah. And I think that, it becomes more about facts, quote unquote, and tests and all the scores and all that stuff, where it's not about, like, I just found out this morning and I didn't look into this, so don't quote me, but I was just talking to somebody this morning, and he was talking about how I live in South Carolina, I live in Horry County, and they mentioned how a friend of his has been fighting against the school board because they took away recess because their test scores are down and they want to, have them work longer. And I go, well, that's going to do the opposite.
Absolutely.
And I told this to him. I said, adults have the best productivity day on a Monday because they just get back into work. And they just had this nice little 2 days off and they're ready to go, right? By Friday, they have their worst productivity day because they're ready for a break. They're exhausted, right?
They need a recess.
They need their recess. How do you think a child feels? It's the same thing. And so I feel like it's the education system that really kills the kids' curiosity. That's where I think it begins.
Well, Gina, I would agree. And by the way, I was an educator for 10 years, so I think I have a right to say this somewhat. But I totally agree with that. I mean, I've always wondered how you take a 4 or 5-year-old who for the first 5 years of their life have learned social skills, have learned a language, have learned motor skills, have learned all of these things, but they're not in a classroom. And they just love to learn. They're curious, like you said. And then once we put them in school, usually within a year or something, they don't even really want to learn anymore. We've done something that stifled that a lot. So I would agree with that a lot. You made a statement, though, that I loved. You said curiosity fuels resilience. Speaking of that, because that's a fascinating comment.
Well, I mean, if we're going to go there, we'll go into how I figured that out.
Yes, please do.
Within the Navy SEAL program that I joined. So I joined a Navy SEAL prep program, and I leaned into being curious because I wanted to test my mindset. And I remember walking up to these guys and seeing them, and, their arms are the size of my entire body, and I'm super intimidated, and I leave. And I said to myself, Gina, you're not even, you just stopped. You wanted to know how strong your mindset is. Well, you just found out you're weak. If you can't go up there, you got to get a little curious and find out, let's test this out.
Interesting.
So then I went and I put one foot in front of the other. I said hello, and I joined the program. And then, we were doing push-ups, and you don't know when it's going to end. He doesn't know when it's going to end. The Navy SEAL that's in charge of this whole entire program, he's just saying down and you go down, and up and you go up. And I remember wanting to quit 7 times in the first minute. I was like, my gosh, I'm exhausted. My arms are going to break. Then I was like, but what if I could do another one and another one? And what if I could keep going? And what, how strong am I going to get? And I leaned into that curiosity. How fast can I go? And I asked myself all these questions to then find out that I am way more capable than I thought. I'm way more stronger than I thought. And then it just went to, well, now how much further can I go? How much can I do? And it's the same thing as a business owner. It's like, and a nonprofit founder and all this other stuff that I do. It's like, well, how much can we raise? And how many people can we impact? Oh, we just impacted 5 or 8. Like, how can we impact 10? It's just little questions like that get you curious. And it's just making sure you're asking yourself the right curious questions. You want to be in the positive of the curiosity.
Yeah. For example, you use the word what if several times. Some people use what if and it's a negative, like, well, what if I fail? But you were using what if, to your point, in a positive way. Like, what if I can do one more push-up? What if I can? Well, that's so interesting though, because I don't think very many people, me included, I would not have thought of curiosity and resiliency to go together, but you explained it so well. They really do, don't they?
Yeah, it's, and like I said, that's why I said the whole positivity, because I heard myself say what if, and I know people are going to be like saying the negative because that's where we normally go. It's like we are more hardwired to go to the negative than we are to the positive, and you need to really rewire that mindset.
Yeah, and circling back to what we started talking about, but that's what children do so well, right? A 3 or 4-year-old is like, hey, what if I can climb on top of this couch and jump off of this over to this chair? So much of their learning is coming out of their what ifs, right?
Definitely, and I also think I speak to a lot of children. I do a lot of author visits. I go to a lot of schools and stuff. And I just remember myself being a child in school miserable. I mean, I went to the nurse's office every single day just to get a break from class. I was like, oh my God, this place is miserable.
Yeah.
And I hated reading. I hated learning. It was also because I wasn't very good at it, because they don't teach you how to learn. They just expect you to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can a child learn something that they're just not interested in? Or just, we all, and they have a curriculum that you need to follow, right? And I say to the students all the time, I go, if you're struggling to read, you're just, and you don't like reading, you're just not reading the right books, and it wasn't until I discovered The Outsiders that I became a reader, because that book was life-changing. And I was like, oh my God, this is a book that just, I wanted to know everything about. Like,
How
I
old
was
were you?
in that world. I was in 7th grade, so I was
So
13.
seventh grade, something sparked with you, like you found something that you were really interested in.
The
Yeah,
Outsiders, that was
yeah.
it. I wanted to read everything, and then there was a movie, and then I'm fascinated by the movie, and then I'm like I would read the book once a year. I mean, I still do. I watch the movie and I study it, and I went into the film business, and then I got an opportunity to work for Ralph Macchio, and all I did was talk about The Outsiders. I was like, I had to ask him everything. It changed my course of learning and reading, and it just made it fun. And then I just stopped caring about, my parents were never big on test scores. Like, they didn't care,
Hmm.
as long as you
Hmm.
just put in an effort, right? You
Yeah,
showed up.
yeah,
There's no excuse to not doing homework. He's like, that's your job. But it's okay if you can't pass a test, right?
yeah.
And so for myself, that's just how I looked at things, where I would just read books on my own that I loved reading and I loved learning about. But I don't think kids really give themselves that opportunity because, again, everything's so focused on test scores.
Yeah. Man, I can't even tell you. You're getting me on my soapbox, by the way. This is my soapbox. I'm passionate about this, and my story is similar to yours. I kind of lived on my own because of my family dysfunction situation. I kind of lived on my own for part of high school. So to take someone who hates school at that point in their life, and they're living on their own and they don't have anybody making you go. So if someone looked at my grade point average from high school, they would probably be shocked how low it was. But someone would make the assumption at that time, oh, he doesn't like to learn. What they didn't know is I was going home at night and I would be up till 2 in the morning sometimes reading a book because I was fascinated with learning. But to your point, it was something that I was maybe interested in. I've loved history all the
Right.
time. So my history grade wasn't good because all history was is asking me to regurgitate dates. But I'm at home reading a history book that's written
Yeah.
by an author that could somehow make history come alive. Yeah, so interesting. So I agree. I think there is something to really sparking that curiosity with kids. Is that what made you get into being a child author?
No, that just kind of happened on a whim. I trained in the Navy SEAL program and I found belonging. It was something I was searching for 31 years. And I finally found it in the most unlikely of places. And at the second to last week of training, I decided I just had this idea. I think I'm going to write a book about belonging. That's when the second to last week of training is when I discovered belonging. And then during that week, it was just kind of like this, whoa, moment. And then the last day of training, I looked at my teammates and I said, thank you so much. You guys taught me belonging, because I was moving. That's why I left the program. They continue, until they go to buds. But for myself, I was a civilian, I wasn't
Hmm.
going anywhere, um, but I said, I'm going to write a book. And really, it was a letter to my younger self. It was a book for little me and 7-year-old me who longed to belong. And I wish I knew that meaning. And then next thing you know, I published it and it just like blew up in terms of schools were asking me to come to teach that message and read the book. And then adults were asking me if I would speak to them. Like, the teachers were like, can you come and do a speaking with us about this? This is an amazing topic. And then next thing you know, it launched a whole speaking career. And that's what happened. But, it's all because I leaned in.
Yeah, and I guess had that out of order. I just thought you were a children's author that then went to a Navy SEALs training program. They're reversed. It was the Navy SEALs training program that sparked that in you.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So what is it about belonging that connected with you or how or what did you understand about it that maybe you didn't understand when you were younger? Because you made the reference that you'd always had this sense of wanting to belong, but you never had that.
So if you looked at me from the outside, you would be like, wow, what a well-adjusted child. Like, I was involved in everything.
Yeah.
My parents put me in everything. They really like wanted me to just experience a bunch of things, figure out passions, figure out, and also my dad was like, the more the kids do, the less trouble they're going to get into. They're just, they keep them busy, right? And we were very busy, like
Mhm.
between like volunteering and from nursing homes and church groups to sports. Sports was a religion in my family. Like, it was a religion.
Mhm.
And the musical I played more than one musical instrument. So like, I was like
Yeah, you were
very
busy.
involved, very busy. And when you looked at me, you were like, wow, like and also fit, quote unquote, I fit in. Like I fit in with everyone. I was a star athlete, like all the stuff. So when you looked, you didn't like, I didn't stand out in terms of like, I fit in with everybody and stuff, but on the inside, I just always felt like I wasn't understood, or, like I felt a little different, or, things like that. Just, it was an inside thing. And that's exactly what belonging is. It's an inside thing. And it really stems from like, I don't feel good enough, or I feel a little different or lonely, or, whatever. And I learned in the Navy SEAL program that it's not about fitting in. Fitting in and belonging are opposites, because fitting in means you have to change yourself to be like everybody else, right? And the main thing is you're never going to really fit in, because let's say you all look the same, you're dressed the same and all that stuff, right? But doesn't mean you think the same, right? Doesn't mean you're on the same skill level, right? All these things matter in terms of diversity, and we don't think that anymore. We think looks, right? It's not about looks. It's about, I mean, there's a part of it, right? But then there's all these other things that we forget about when we want to diversify our company, diversify our school, all this other stuff. It's like skill levels is a big thing, and beliefs. And we want people that have different, that or not thinking the same, right? Because that's how we're going to grow and all that stuff. So I learned that I was never going to fit in with these guys no matter what. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. I don't look like them. I'm not on the same skill level as them, like all these things, right? But that didn't mean that I didn't belong there, because I showed up every single time and I took the same beating as they did every single time, right? And I learned that belonging is showing up as your authentic self, knowing that you're enough. And if you know that you belong, like, that's a game changer, because your skill level is going to get better, because how many times do you like run away?
Can you say that again? That was so good. Can you give us that definition of belonging again?
Yeah, belonging is showing up as your authentic self, knowing that you are enough.
Wow. So how old, do you mind me asking how old you were when you
I'm
did this
35.
Navy SEALs? Okay, you're 35 now.
Today I'm 35. I'm 31.
Okay.
I was 31 when I joined the Navy SEAL program.
So you did the Navy SEAL program. So it was really at around 31 where you really, first time in your life where you started having a sense of belonging, not fitting in, but belonging.
Belonging. And you take that with you everywhere. So at the time I was also doing comedy, and I just moved from Los Angeles to New York at that time. And now I grew up in New York, so I wasn't a stranger to New York. It was just I was coming back to it after 10 years, and I was going into the comedy world. And when you know that you belong, I mean, you just show up like confident, knowing that like I could bomb and I still belong, because you all bomb. It's not like you're not, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And it's just like, it doesn't mean, because so many times like you bomb and you're like, oh, I don't belong here. No, belonging is a thing on the inside. Like when you have imposter syndrome, it's because you don't understand belonging. And when you can understand belonging, you will not have imposter syndrome, because you belong everywhere. You just need to know that.
That is so good. I actually am taking time to write down what you just said, because I think a lot of people deal with imposter syndrome. In fact, to your point, like when you were in high school, a lot of the people that you're sitting maybe in a boardroom and they're like, oh, they're the ones that have it together, just like you did in high school. And from the outward, everybody would be like, oh, she's definitely got to feel like she fits in or belongs. But when you start digging in to people and they get vulnerable and transparent with you, you find out that most people struggle with imposter syndrome.
Yeah, because they don't understand belonging.
They don't understand belonging. And what they don't understand about belonging, which is, again, showing up in your authentic self.
Knowing that you're enough. That's it. It's like, it's just done. Like, it's just like, there's so many people that like, quote unquote, made it, right? Successful in their mind in terms of, I can't believe I got here. It's like, well, you've been working towards it. Why is that hard to believe that you got there? It's like, that's what you've been working to obtain. And then you went there. Or it's like, you decided to go this path and it just kind of blew up for you, right? But you put in a lot of work there, right? But you have this imposter syndrome. It's because you don't understand belonging. You don't feel good enough about you.
And trying to fit in is exhausting, isn't it? Because to
you can't.
Point, you're wearing all these masks, and you got to put this mask on and this mask on, and which goes back to belonging as your authentic self.
And if you're trying to fit in, who are you?
Yes. Yeah. Well, now backing up, then that's what gave you a passion to write a children's book then, because you wrote the children's book about belonging.
Yeah, wrote it to my little self, and then,
Yeah. So what did you tell your little self? I want to pique our audience's interest to go buy your book, whether it be for themselves or their kids or their grandkids or nieces and nephews.
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss a future podcast. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
So, fun fact, it only took me 4 hours to write because it just flew out of me because I discovered something that I was searching for 31 years. And when I wrote it, I originally wrote it as me as the character, but then as a marketing standpoint, I was like, let me do an alien because I have a lot of males in my family, like young boys. And I primarily just thought family's going to buy this, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted them to, enjoy the story and not, relate to anybody. So I made the character an alien. And then the alien goes on to this journey to find belonging. And throughout the book, the alien goes to play a sport. The alien goes to play an instrument. The alien goes to, there's a scene where they're on the beach in uniform and it's the uniform I had in the Navy SEAL program. We trained on the beach and there's a little image of me, like as the character.
Okay.
And the alien goes and doesn't feel good enough there. And then they're going to build a race car and can't, all this stuff. And it's all the things that me as a child was intrigued by: sports, music, working out, and the race car thing just fit. I was just trying to think of everything for every child can relate and fit into. And that's really, it just kind of it just wrote itself, and I wrote it through the eyes of 7-year-old me. I mean, I literally wasn't a 31-year-old writing this. I was writing this for 7-year-old me, wishing I had this message, and to simplify it for a 7-year-old.
Yeah. And man, if a kid could get that right before you were 31, when you got it, I was much older than that. I think I'm still learning that, to be honest. If I'm transparent with our audience, I think I'm still learning what it really means to belong instead of trying to fit in, which I spent most of my, because I'm a people pleaser by nature. And so it was easy for me to bend toward trying to fit in, which again is an exhausting way to live.
It is
exhausting because you'll never actually achieve it, as you said.
You won't.
Yeah.
There's too many factors,
Yeah. So what a great story. Again, I would encourage our audience, go grab this book. How would they grab that really quick?
You can go on my website, GinaCasazza.com.
Okay.
I sign them on the website. There's also copies on Amazon and stuff.
Yeah. And so we'll put that in the description as well. So people, when they're listening to this podcast, you can just go to the description. You can click on that link and find this. So that's why you wrote the book. You talked about storytelling a little bit before we even turned the cameras on and got going with this, and how passionate you are about storytelling. Why is that?
We all have a story. Every single one of us has a story. And, back in the old times, you gather around a campfire and you tell a story, and it brings people together. It helps you connect with each other. And we don't do that anymore. We connect through technology. And I think that there is a positive to it. I mean, without it, we wouldn't be here right now, right?
Yeah.
But there's also something important about connecting with each other. Like, I heard some of your story, that you were sharing with me. And it is really interesting, especially for someone that was in high school, like on their own, and look at you today. I mean, I want to know more. That's really interesting to me. But I think that growing up in the digital age, we stop asking questions and getting curious, right? Just like now I'm intrigued by your story. I want to know more about your story. We don't listen well because our focus and our attention span is just dwindling away. And I want to get back to that. And one of the things that I share with the kids when I go into the schools is I say, you guys just read my story. Like, I'm the one that didn't belong, right? And one day I want to read your story because your story is worth sharing. So go out and share your story. Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't want to. We feel judgment. We feel all this stuff. Well, guess what? Like, I mean, the world is full of critics, but the thing is, like, they're not there with you. They didn't go through what you went through. So what does it matter? Like, I have a TikTok specifically for my podcast. And because my podcast is a Special Forces podcast, I also don't just share clips of the guests. I also share clips of me, right, in the Navy SEAL program. And I get all the haters on when I do things like that. And I have fun with it and I laugh because I just think, you weren't there. Like, you didn't do it.
Mhm.
Come join me, you know? Or, you know, to me, you gotta just take it all with a grain of salt and just laugh it out. But stories are meant to be told, and we gotta stop being so afraid to share them.
Yeah. Man, I love that too because I was a communicator from the stage for the last 20, 30 years. I don't do it much anymore. But Gina, in my early 40s, I'm 53 now. In my early 40s, I started to shift a little bit how I would speak because I saw the power of storytelling. You were saying it. It's the one thing throughout human history that we have. People would sit around, they would tell stories, they would write books. And so if someone were to look at the old recordings of me speaking from the stage, versus the last 10 years or so, I really started shifting toward being a narrative speaker, like storytelling, making a story come alive. And I actually think I improved a lot as a speaker. You capture the audience's attention. Why? Because everybody's interested by a good story. Always have been, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, I'm doing the same thing now as I'm now moving into the adult speaking world. The reason why I get kids' attention so well and I could talk for a little bit is because I share with them a story. I show videos to it too, which keeps them even more engaged. But for adults, I'm now thinking like, and moving into that world, how can I bring story into the lesson that I'm sharing with them? And the main thing that I'm sharing is, how are we going to increase productivity and sales in the workplace? Boring. It's important. It's an important thing, but you've probably heard it 1,000 times. So now I got to bring in story in order for you to really understand and hear that message, because sometimes the message, we could hear it 1,000 times, but the way somebody tells it is going to really impact us versus a generic way. And that way is through story.
Well, I'm wired similar to you too. I mean, you were talking about being interested in my story, the little bit that you heard. This is why I love doing podcasts so much. It's my favorite part of it is I get to just hear people's stories. Because as you said, everyone has a story, and I think everyone's story is interesting. And there's learning that I can do and our audience can do from everyone else's story and how they navigated their journey of life. And so I think that's such a fascinating part. Help us understand though. So this podcast is probably going to drop around Mother's Day. And so for mothers, but not just mothers, let's say fathers too, or uncles or aunts or anybody who's working with kids, how would you recommend they use story or leverage story to help teach their kids?
There are so many fun ways, and it really is all about the kids. How are you going to get the kids engaged? I have my nephew's brother is 9. And one of the things that we used to do together is he loved telling stories, and we'd play a game with each other where I'd start the story and I'd tag him, and then he would finish. He would then continue the story. And then when he gets stuck, he'd tag me, and then I'd tag him. And then there comes a point where we just stop and he just goes on and on and on and on. And I love it. Like, I am intrigued by it.
So you were kind of playing tag with storytelling.
Tag with storytelling, and
it's a great idea.
He loved it. I mean, the thing is, how many of you, and I'm talking to the listeners right now, are sitting down and having dinner as a family? And when you are sitting down and having dinner as a family, what is that like? Because that's a great time for story. Think of that as the campfire, right? Because nowadays we're losing that.
Yeah.
People aren't sitting home for dinner at the table talking and sharing and things like that. It's a very low number compared to what it was when I was a kid. And then definitely when my dad was a kid, that was what everybody did, right? So that is another way, sitting down and having dinner as a family. And let's say you can't do it Monday through Friday, right? But what about Sunday? What about the Saturday or Sunday? Like, make it a day. Like, my dad had a rule growing up, because he worked Monday through Friday, and we did see him. He was very present in our lives and stuff. But Sunday was his day, and it was family day. And it was like, you see your friends Monday through Friday. You see them on Saturday. Sunday's my day. And that was the day that we spent time as a family and got to know each other better. And my family and I are very, very close.
That's amazing.
But it's just things like that. Like, another thing that I do with students, with kids, with young kids, is we make stories together. We're like, they'll create the character, and I'll help them. I'll improv with them, where I'll be like, what character are we creating? Are we creating a human? Are we creating an alien? Are we creating an animal? And then, they'll say, what animal are we picking? What color is the animal? It could be anything. Like the last class I did a lion with rainbow fur. And they go, and then one kid was like, but lions don't have rainbow fur. And I go, it's your story. You're the god of the story.
They can have
you
whatever they want.
Whatever you want, right? And I go, well, what's going to happen in the story? Where's the character going to go? And then what I do is then I throw it into ChatGPT. This is one of the beauties of technology because it's quick, it's easy, right? And then it creates like a little 8-page story, and I put it on like a kindergarten grade level. And then I go into Canva and I put the clip art and stuff like that. And then I actually can go into ChatGPT and say, create a lion with rainbow fur. It's going to create the character for me. And then we write a story together. And it takes less than an hour. We get to connect. We get to have fun. We're not sitting in front of a TV. And it's just little things like that. There's so many activities. And I just started a Substack. I normally don't do this, like shake things like this, but I just started it last week for parents to help build resilience in children and help increase literacy. And I am starting to share little things like this because it's endless. There's so much that you can do. It's just, what is your kid like doing? And how can you, it's not about you, it's about your child.
Yeah.
And you just have to, because your child might not be into sports and you're into sports, but you have to get on their level in terms of figuring out how you guys can connect, know?
Yeah. Gina, man, I love what you just said because it's so fascinating. You're kind of going back to what we said, storytelling. It's been around for all of human history, but you're leveraging a tool that's almost brand new to us as humans, ChatGPT, and you're bringing those together. So what I hear you saying is you're sitting in a classroom, you're asking the kids questions, and you're putting that information into like a ChatGPT. We're going to have a lion with rainbow fur, and where's he going to live, and all these things. You're putting it in there, and then you're telling it to create a story out of that. And anybody could do this at home.
You could do it at home. It's simple.
With your own kids.
Yeah, and you could do like, if you have more than one kid and you want to do the story time, where you play tag with stories and things like that. I make everything a game. My nephew right now, he's 3. He's like my little tester in terms of things.
Yeah.
And he really does well with music. He loves music at 3. And so Cosmo the Alien, my alien from my book, there is a second book coming out. So I branded the character and I created Cosmo the Alien for YouTube, and I made an animation, and I do story time through animation and music. Yeah. And he loves it. It's something he loves. But again, what he likes doesn't mean another kid's going to like. It's just, you got to find out what works. And all of this is learning. All this is getting them curious. All this is building their confidence and their self-esteem. And people say, well, how is it doing that? And I say, well, when you have a kid that's curious, you have a resilient kid, and that creates a confident, high self-esteem kid. It's all encompassing.
Yeah. One of my grandkids and he's 8, and he and I have been building a spaceship for 3 years. Imaginary one, just like you're talking about. So when I see him, because they live a different city than us, but when I see him, sometimes when I'm putting in bed at night, we'll go back to that spaceship and we'll be like, okay, remember last time we have a whole floor that's got a water slide down to it, and you can like breathe underwater. And it's his imagination doing a lot of it. Not only has it been a connecting thing for he and I, so that's one thing that parents or aunts and uncles or grandparents or anybody, teachers, you're connecting with that child, right? But to your point, then you're helping them build confidence and resiliency and storytelling, all of those things. That's so good. Well, Gina, anything that we're missing that you would like to share before we wrap up?
No, what a great conversation.
This has been fun.
This has been really fun. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
I'm curious, is there anything you don't do? You've mentioned film, you're an author, the Navy SEALs training. What else did you talk about? Comedy? I mean, what don't you do?
I don't sit in an office working a 9 to 5.
You're curious, right? You're curious. That's why you've done all those things. Curiosity, right?
Yeah, I get curious. I also tell me you don't have kids without telling me you don't have kids.
Yeah, that would be
it. That's why I can do all this stuff. When I'm with my nephew, it's like I go, oh my God, like I could never do everything that I do, because when I'm with him, he's my whole entire world. He's
Yeah.
my morning, everything is, it takes a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you do a lot of sacrificing when you raise a child. And I think it's so rewarding and amazing. And I hope one day maybe I get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm just,
Yeah.
everything I'm curious about, I'm touching.
Well, it sounds like you're having an impact on a lot of other children and people and adults as well, because I think, like we've talked about, all of those things, inspiring minds, building belonging, sparking imagination, your tagline, those are also important for us as adults. And we lost, many of us lost it somewhere along the way, and we can go get it back if we really want.
Of course. Yeah. Read my book.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me finish with, this is the fun part of the podcast. So we've been talking here for about 45 minutes. I'm going to see how well I know you. 2 truths and a lie. So you're going to give me 3 statements. 2 of them will be truths. 1 will be a lie. I got to try to guess the lie.
Okay. I went completely deaf in my left ear. I went cageless shark diving. I once paid to get kidnapped.
Those are awesome. Okay. Paid to get kidnapped. I'm going to say...
hold on. Can I change it?
Yeah,
Can I change one?
yeah.
Get rid of the hearing one.
Okay.
Let's go with, I trained my body to function on 3 hours of sleep for a month.
Wow. I'm going to try to narrow it down to 50-50. The cageless shark dive, you did that. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. All right. See, well, all the other stuff you did, I'm like, of course she jumped in the water without a cage with sharks. So the lie, I'm going to say the lie is you trained to function on 3 hours of sleep for a month, because
That's
you were
true.
telling me how much you enjoy sleep.
I realized. The thing was, I accidentally give you all truths, and I went through it. Then I go, no, wait, those are all real.
Yeah.
I had to give a lie. I forgot. I'm so sorry.
No, that's good. So you paid to get kidnapped?
I paid to get kidnapped. Yeah.
And deaf in your left ear, always from birth, or?
At 21, I lost all hearing in my left ear.
Okay.
And then I regained it at 10 years later.
Wow. Was that weird when it came back? Because I'm sure everything was so loud.
Because I was training for it. I only regained 85%, but from 0 to 85, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, that is. Well, Gina, thank you so much for joining us. We will have, again, the contact information that you shared. It'll be in the description so people can go find your book or go find more about you if they want to do that. And I would really encourage them to do that. Most of us have children in our lives, and so this is a great way to speak hope and life into the children that we have in our lives, but also for us to learn as adults. And so I would encourage them to do that. So Gina, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for turning into the No Gray Areas with Gina Casazza. Whether you're raising kids, leading teams, or just trying to show up more fully in your own life, remember, curiosity and authenticity go a long way. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more episodes every other Wednesday. We'll see you next time.